if you're in the mind of a Hibernian fan and you own the club with your family, what do you think the three main priorities are for Hibernian fans?
I think firstly, the football. The football needs to improve. We know that it hasn't been good enough the last couple of years, but we feel with the current structure now that we're in a good place moving forward. I think massively is the community aspect of this club is so important, and now with us bringing the community foundation in-house and the great work that they're doing, I think is a great tool. And then thirdly is the fans. Doing the north stand here, the rail seating, we want to create an atmosphere that fans are passionate about coming to.
You mentioned the football to start with. I think everyone would agree it is all about the football at the end of the day. You said it hasn't been as good as you hoped. Why do you think that is?
I think just down to the inconsistencies down on the footballing side of the business. We have had way too much change down at HTC. And I think a lot of lessons have been learned through those mistakes, and we feel now with the current structure we're in a good place.
Why do you think you made those mistakes?
I think we tried to, when we came in, and with my father and I, we tried to have a different way of thinking, a different way of recruitment, a different structure than was in place. I think we got that wrong, and now through those lessons, it's gotten us to a point where, having someone like Malky with his Scottish experience and someone with Dave who knows the club inside and out and his Scottish experience was the direction we needed to get back to.
So you're saying you wanted to change it, and maybe you saw that from the outside. But do you feel you didn't get the balance right there then?
I think that is accurate. I think we wanted to try to shift the direction in terms of the recruitment and the type of players. But I think as the years have gone on and the more you learn about Scottish football, it's very unique. So we need to have a Scottish experience core that then can be kind of filled in with certain type of players.
Back in October 2021, you were appointed head of recruitment. What did that role entail?
Yeah, so at the time we removed the current sporting director, and we felt it was a good time to get a full assessment of the football department. So my role was to oversee the process of how we found our targets and then report that to the manager.
Some would say, what made you the best person for that job? Why were you qualified for that job?
I think at the time, from a process standpoint, we felt with us being new to the league and to the club that it was the appropriate time. I think on reflection, that was a mistake, and it's something we've learned massively from.
There wasn't any big announcement that you were in that job. Was there a kind of trepidation because you were the then owner's son that by giving you that position it would look a bit like nepotism then, and that was something that you were worried about, but ultimately it maybe in hindsight looked like a lack of transparency?
I think the lack of transparency, yes, I think that was a mistake on our part. I think we needed to communicate that better and be more specific as to what my role was.
Tell us about your experience then in talent identification and recruitment.
It's something that over the last few years and even before we bought Hibs that I was studying. I took courses and got a degree from in talent ID, but it's something I've always been across and had a passion for.
Do you feel that was enough coming into the role in hindsight now?
No, in hindsight, I think we would have done things differently. But through those lessons, those mistakes, a lot of lessons have been learned, and we feel that we're now in a good position due to that.
You said the recruitment, or you hinted that it hadn't been good enough. What gives you the confidence now that it will be good enough?
I think going back to the staff that we have in place now, with Malky leading that up, we feel the department is very strong and it has great resources to improve. And I think we saw some of that in the summer's window with the type of players we brought in.
The argument would be that if you were making the same mistakes in recruitment and it's the same collective, then you have to change the collective. You have to look at what staff are doing and make it better or make changes. Is that something you have done?
Yeah, we have. So, with Malky being in place, David Marshall in post, 2 new analysts in post, we have 3 new scouts working for the club. We also have, the Black Knight who can help us from a best practice and other resources for recruitment.
How much are you still involved with recruitment?
I just oversee. I support Malky and Dave in any way that they need. So there's always constant dialogue and communication in terms of the direction we want to go. But ultimately, I'm there to support them as much as I can.
In terms of head of recruitment, was that job a lot bigger than you thought? You needed more help. You should have asked for more help.
Yeah, I believe so. I believe, at the time, with more support and structure around, that would have been helpful. But yes, I do agree that the timing of that was not correct.
Tell us what the player trading model is at Hibs then.
Yeah, so I think, you've seen with a couple of the players we brought in, we're trying to buy younger players from different markets. I think, that has shifted a little with the likes of Kieran Bowie coming in. But even to, pick out as someone like Elias Melkerson is someone who we took a chance on, at 18 years old. Didn't work for him at the club, but he went out and got a great loan, and the club was able to make a great sale on that.
Do you feel that you need to use or work that model better?
Yeah, I think we can always look to improve in that space. I think as we kind of put the new structure in place with Malky, that there can be a reset in that space. But we feel our player trading model has been successful over the last couple of years, and we can always improve in that space.
Malky's been quoted as saying, he said to me here at Easter Road last month about so many players out of contract, I think it was 12 or 15, something like that, at the end of the season, and that will help alleviate some issues in terms of size of the squad and wages paid at the end of the season. But that would suggest then that the player trading model is not working as well because you can't get rid of those players and they're still taking a wage out of the club. Is that a fair criticism?
I think that is a fair criticism. We know the squad is far too bloated, and that's down to the inconsistencies on the manager front. So we know Malky and Dave came in with a bloated squad, but we knew this summer was big to position us for next summer with so many players coming out of contract.
How much of an issue is that causing for, say, a manager to have to manage so many players that are still there but don't really have a chance of playing, and also on the wage bill too?
Yeah, we know the wage bill is inflated at this time, and it's something that my family is committed to. We're committed to that overspend. We know we have a 1-year bloated squad, and next year with over 15 out of contract, it allows almost a reset next summer.
That would suggest this is a transitional season though, and I don't think Hibs fans want to hear that. Is that the case?
No, absolutely not. Our targets are still very much in place, and Dave knows that. But we also know that we need to give Dave support and time to build this squad correctly.
How would you rate the state of Hibernian's finances?
I think on the business side, the club is in an excellent position. We've seen significant growth on that side. Obviously, there's an overspend at the moment because we're chasing football success, and with all the turnover the last couple of years, we're needing to chase that. But as a family, that's something that we're committed to get the footballing side right, because we do believe once that happens, that the club will be in a very stable position.
You mentioned an increase in turnover, obviously very positive. How have you managed to do that?
I think, with the team at Easter Road with Ben and Murray and the rest of the guys driving the commercial partnerships, we're up over 400% on that. The hospitality space, the income that has brought. So I think from a business side, the club is in a massively better place.
Economically in the UK and in the world, times are tough. So how big a positive is that you've been able to increase it so much?
Yeah, I think it's huge, and it gives us the platform for when we do get the football right, that the club will be very sustainable.
Staffing costs, I think 10.1 million in the last set of accounts. Wages to turnover ratio was 81%. What's your assessment on that?
Yeah, I think we know that's too high at this time, but through all this growth here, we've needed to bring in more staff to drive that forward.
When you look at Hibs finishing third in 2021, they got to a Scottish Cup final. Staffing costs were only 6.6 million. It looks on paper as if Hibs are pushing the boat out, but actually, certainly on the field, they're doing worse. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that is fair, and it goes back to the inconsistency that we have put in place here. That there's been too much turnover and too much change, and we're chasing that success, and we know now with the current structure that with Malky and Dave that they need time to build this properly.
Could you do better with a lower cost base though? You say you're chasing it, but Could you still do better, but not spending as much, not chasing it?
Yeah, I think there is an element of that. We know next summer, with so many players out of contract, that we're going to be able to kind of get everything back in a more balanced place.
Is the current cost base sustainable?
No, at this moment it currently isn't. But as a family, we're committed to that overspend. But we do feel going into next year and years to come that the club can be in a great position to be very sustainable.
You've gone from 8th to 5th, but then now you're back at 8th again last season. How much of a hit financially do you expect to take in the next set of accounts?
Yeah, so I won't go into specific numbers, but at this time it is something we're committed to. And last season was a massive disappointment. We didn't hit our objectives. We felt the season prior to the 5th place was a good season. We were getting back on track and heading in the right direction. So, last year was a massive failure for us.
Should the money you spend not guarantee you top 6 football in the Scottish Premiership?
I would like to think so, but it's football and there's so many variables to that. But we do feel that we have massively supported Dave and Malky to build the best squad possible this summer.
Are Hibs running a speculate to accumulate model? Because you said you were chasing it earlier. Is that something you're doing?
No, I think we know there's been some mistakes, so we know we need to help get through this period of time because we do have this bloated squad. So we felt for this year that we needed to keep pushing to support Malky and Dave and give them the best chance.
It does mean that you have to take the hit then if you're bolstering spending, and it is incumbent on your family to do that. Is that something you've been willing to do? Is that a difficult decision when, if you are trying to chase it, in your words, that you have to also make sure that you're going to back it as well when it doesn't work?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something, through many discussions with my family over the last, 18 months, is that we're fully committed to this. Is this something we're fully behind to get right?
How big an issue has stability been in the dugout for Hibernian Football Club?
Yeah, I think, as I've alluded to, is that that's been a massive problem for us. It's hard to build something when you're constantly changing. So we do feel now, we need to put a structure in place and time to Dave and Malky.
How active were you in terms of those appointments?
I was a part of the process. It was myself and the rest of the board were a part of that process.
Do you think the problem has been the manager hasn't been able to fit into the Hibernian Football Club structure, or maybe Hibernian haven't been able to bend to the managers enough to allow them enough leeway to succeed?
I think there's probably a bit of both, but depending on the manager. But a lot of lessons have been learned, and having that senior figure like Malky down at that HTC is going to be a massive benefit. I think that's something we've lacked over the last couple of years under young managers at the time, that we didn't have that senior footballing experience down at HTC.
Should you have got rid of Jack Ross in the end then, given he finished third, first time since 2005, Scottish Cup final? Before he left, he got Hibs to a League Cup final. Do you think now, looking back, that might have been the wrong decision?
Yeah, I think as my dad came out and said in his interview that was a mistake, and I view it the same way. I think at that time it was a bit knee-jerk reaction, and lessons have been learned from then and along the way since then. I know it's tough for fans to realize that, but there has been massive lessons learned throughout that time.
Is it a case of you've had to make those mistakes to realise, or should you have wised up earlier?
I think, yeah, I could always wise up a bit earlier. That's something, not hiding from the fact that we haven't gotten it correct along the way, but we do feel through the ups and downs over the last few years that we're in a good position.
I think some of the worrying things would be that when Sean Maloney and Nick Montgomery come in, not at the start of a season, and both of them left before the end of the season, that would suggest that the board or yourself or the ownership weren't even confident in backing your own decisions, i.e. putting them in place. Is that the case?
Yeah, I think that there's elements of that. It's definitely something, we felt that we made right decisions at the time, and as months go by on and as you start to work day to day with people, that you realize, maybe this isn't the direction we want to be heading.
How much does this come at a cost, this constant turnover of managers? Not only compensation potentially for them, but that constant then cycle. It's a vicious circle Hibs seem to be in with players, managers at the minute.
Yeah,
that right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's why you're seeing the overspend. That's why you're seeing the accounts the way they are. Is it's not cheap to change staff, and with that comes the bloated squad. So I think it's all a compounded effect. But we do feel that we're now, with the structure in place, that it's in a good position.
You have a partnership. You have the Black Knights. When did you feel the need to kind of reach out and decide you wanted a partnership at this club?
Yeah, so I think it's something my dad and my family had always discussed a lot. At some point we would look to bring in a partner that can help improve us, financially, but also best practices and a network that we could work with. So it was always something that was in the plans. And obviously after the passing of my father, there was many approaches by many different groups and individuals, but we always felt that through those discussions that Black Knight presented a great opportunity for us.
What other potential options did you have? Because I do remember listening to, I think, Ben Kinsell at the AGM media conference afterwards saying that wasn't the only option on the table.
Yeah, there was many options and different levels of options. People had approached about taking over the club and things like that, and that was something that we never entertained. But from a minority shareholding standpoint, there was a few options that were considered.
If Hibernian Football Club could benefit, was there not other options where you could have relinquished that majority control, or was that always at the forefront? You wanted to make sure you were still in control.
Yeah, it was always that was always the plan my father wanted, and as a family we want to lead this club. We feel that as caretakers for this club that we can continue to drive it forward like we have planned.
In terms of some of the other options you knocked back, do you think that they will rear their head in Scottish football going forward? Could you live to regret some of those decisions, or do you feel you've got the right partnership?
No, I think we're happy with where we are with Black Knight, and we feel that there's going to be many benefits for years to come. And
you don't worry that the other options might come back and show what they could do with other clubs?
Yeah, that might happen, but it's ultimately, it's about Hibs and growing Hibs to be the best version of itself.
How does it work on a week-to-week basis, though, that relationship with the Black Knights?
Yeah, so we're in constant communication. They've hired a new president of Black Knight, Tim Bezpachenko, who's now come in, a little over a month ago. So those conversations are happening on a regular basis. Malky is in direct contact with him almost daily. So, the partnership and the network of Black Knight is in the early stages, and, there's going to take time to build that network, but, the groundworks are being put in now.
We noticed Tim here at the Celtic game back in August. What did he make of the setup you have, and what was his was he just here for that game, or did he have an overview while he was here?
No, we took him around the club. He met with different departments, and he was very hands-on while here, and it was great having him here. And off the back of that, there's been great dialogue since then.
Is it a difficult balance, because they have invested in the club, but you have the majority shareholding, to take the best practice, but also make sure that you do what's right for the club and not for a minority owner or a minority shareholder?
I think ultimately, as caretakers for the club, me and my family always have the club's best interest at heart. And when we make these decisions, it's always with Hibs at the front of our minds.
Bill Foley said to the BBC back in the summer, if the other ownership group listens to us, they will do better. So far, they haven't been listening to our input. I believe they will listen to our input now. What did he mean by that?
I think obviously, well reported on the hiring of our manager and sporting director. Black Knight was very involved in that process throughout. It was a very thorough process, but when it came down to it, the family and the board felt it was in the best interest to make the appointments that we did.
Does that go back to proving that you do have that autonomy if anyone was ever worried?
Yeah, I think that does show that. I think ultimately it's always the Hibs first.
Is that something that you had to mend bridges there in terms of what Bill Foley said, or what discussions have you had with him since then, personally?
Yeah, there's been discussions since then, and the relationship is in a good place. We're in constant communication with the guys at Bournemouth, with Ryan Caswell as well, and now with Tim. So the dialogue's always there, and we see best practices coming with Tim coming up. There's going to be certain people from Bournemouth's departments coming up to work with our guys. So there's things ongoing in the background.
Yeah, the worry would be that this is a relationship that's kind of torn a bit already after 6 months, and Hibs didn't sign any players from any other club in the network in the transfer window. Are people reading too much into both?
Yeah, I think, you know, we looked at the network and there was players lined up from the network, but, you know, injuries happen, these sort of things come up. So it was kind of out of our power a bit in terms of, we would love to bring in players from the network, but it just didn't work out that way this summer.
What would your message to those that are disaffected at the minute, that are maybe a bit apathetic about Hibs, a bit disappointed, what do you say to them to give them encouragement going forward?
Yeah, I think, you know, through the ups and downs of the last few years, that a lot of lessons have been learned, and we've grown the club massively on the business side. We know it hasn't been good enough on the football, but we feel with the structure now and Dave leading the guys that, you know, we can get this thing going, and we'll be in a great place when that does happen.
Can you look, I don't know, 5 years into the future? What would you like to see for Hibernian Football Club?
I think it's competing at the top end of the pitch and you know, being in European competitions. I think that is something this club desperately needs to achieve, and you know, with that would bring much joy.
Your mum said at the AGM that the commitment's absolute. Is that something just now that you have a long-term plan for the family committed to this football club?
Yeah, our family is very committed to this. It's something we care deeply about, and we have long-term ambitions.